Picture this. You're at a family gathering, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever holiday brings everyone to the same table, and someone brings up retirement. Maybe it's your uncle, maybe it's your parents. And the conversation has this specific texture to it that you've noticed before. Vague, optimistic in a way that doesn't have any numbers behind it. We'll be fine. We've got our Social Security. The house is paid off. And you're sitting there nodding, but something in your gut is doing math that nobody wants to say out loud. And then later, when you're alone, you start doing the math on yourself. And it gets uncomfortable fast. Because the gap between what you've actually saved and what you think you probably need feels enormous, almost impossibly enormous, like a number so big that working toward it feels pointless. So you close the app, tell yourself you'll deal with it later, and put it away. Here's what I need you to know before anything else. The number you're scared of, the one that makes retirement feel unreachable, it's almost certainly wrong. The conventional wisdom about how much you need to retire, the scary, intimidating number that gets thrown around constantly, is built on an assumption about average people that is almost entirely disconnected from what average people actually do. And once you see the real number and what it actually means for where you stand right now, you are going to feel something genuinely shift. My name is Max, and I want to help you learn how to make your money work more for you in your life. This channel is about building the kind of financial understanding that actually changes your behavior. Not because you're motivated for a week, but because you finally see the whole picture. If that's what you're here for, subscribe, because this is exactly what we do. Okay, the belief to dismantle. Most people who think about retirement carry around a number in their head, a big round number that they've absorbed from financial media, articles, maybe a coworker who read something once. That number is usually somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million to $1.5 million. And the implicit message attached to that number is, anything less than this is not enough. You will run out of money. You will be dependent. You will have failed at the basic task of financial adulthood. And here's what that number does to people. It paralyzes them. If the finish line is $1.2 million and you currently have $18,000 saved at age 38, the gap is so enormous that the rational human response is often to stop engaging with the problem entirely. It's like telling someone who's never run a 5K that they need to be marathon ready by next year. Not motivating, just overwhelming. And overwhelmed people don't build wealth, they avoid it. But here's the truth that completely reframes this. The average American reaches retirement age, 65 to 67, with somewhere between $170,000 and $250,000 in total savings, not $1 million, not $1.5 million. Depending on which data set you use and how you define savings, the median retirement savings for Americans near retirement age is roughly $87,000. Let that land for a second. The median, meaning half of all people approaching retirement have less than that. Now, I'm not telling you that $87,000 is enough, or that you should aim for $170,000, or that the scary number is completely fabricated. What I'm telling you is that the gap between where most people actually are and where conventional wisdom says you need to be is so large that it renders the conventional target almost useless as a motivational tool. What's actually useful is understanding where you rank against real people, what moves the needle most dramatically from here, and critically, what the people who do retire with real security did differently in the years before they got there. And that story is not about the number. It's about the behavior. Let me explain. Think about a game of catch-up that most people play wrong. Imagine you're trying to fill a bathtub with a garden hose while the drain is partially open. If the drain is losing water faster than the hose can add it, the tub never fills. You could run the hose harder, work more, earn more. But if the drain is open and growing, you'll stay exactly as stuck. The drain is lifestyle costs. The hose is income and savings. And the people who retire with real security, who are genuinely ahead of the median, didn't just run a stronger hose. They plugged the drain first. They kept lifestyle costs structurally low, protected their savings rate, and then pointed everything they had at the tub. And the tub filled faster than anyone expected because the math of compounding finally had room to work. The people who retire with $170,000 or less, almost universally, the drain was always slightly bigger than the hose. Every raise they got, the lifestyle upgraded slightly to match. The savings rate never crossed a threshold where compounding could do its work. It's not bad luck, it's a mechanical failure of a system that nobody taught them to maintain. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the psychology of why this happens and what breaks the pattern is something you can actually act on. There's a cognitive phenomenon called future self-discontinuity, documented by psychologists, including Hal Hershfield, which describes the way most people's brains process their future self, almost like a stranger. Brain imaging studies have shown that when people think about who they'll be at 65, the neural activation patterns look more like thinking about a different person than thinking about yourself. Your 65-year-old self doesn't feel like you. They feel like someone else, someone abstract, someone distant enough that sacrificing for their benefit doesn't feel like self-care. It feels like charity to a stranger. And this explains something that otherwise seems completely irrational. Why do smart, capable, financially aware people consistently underinvest for retirement? Not because they don't know they should, not because they lack the discipline in other areas, but because the person they're saving for, the elderly version of themselves, decades away, doesn't feel real in the way that today's rent or today's opportunity or today's comfort does. The brain's threat response system is optimized for the immediate. Distant benefits require a deliberate override of a very powerful default. The intervention, interestingly, is not more information about retirement savings. It's more vividness of your future self. People who were shown age-progressed images of themselves, their faces digitally aged to look 65, subsequently allocated significantly more money to retirement savings and lab studies. The future self became more real, more like them, more worth saving for. This might sound like a novelty, but the mechanism it reveals is important. The bridge between your current behavior and your future security is not knowledge. It's felt connection to who you're becoming. So how do you build that connection in a practical way? You work backward from the real number, not $1.2 million, the real number for your actual life. Here's how the math actually works. The most widely used framework for retirement withdrawal is the 4% rule, which states that you can safely withdraw 4% of your portfolio per year in retirement without running out of money over a 30-year period. This is based on historical market data and is a reasonable, conservative estimate. What it means practically is this. To generate $40,000 per year in retirement income from investments, you need $1 million. To generate $30,000 per year, you need $750,000. To generate $20,000 per year, which supplemented by Social Security, gets many people to a modest but workable income, you need $500,000. And now, $500,000, let's build that number from where you are. Let's say you're 35 years old, you have $22,000 saved, and you're able to invest $700 a month going forward at an average 8% annual return. In 30 years, you're 65. Your portfolio is approximately $1.03 million. You didn't need a dramatic income. You didn't need to catch a lucky break. You needed $700 a month, 30 years, and an 8% return to cross seven figures. And that $700 generates, at the 4% rule, about $41,000 per year in withdrawals, which alongside Social Security of even $18,000 to $20,000 a year puts most people in a genuinely comfortable retirement. Now here's the part that makes the math feel almost unfair. If you start at 25 instead of 35, same $700 a month, same 8%, just 10 more years, your portfolio at 65 is approximately $2.19 million. Same monthly contribution, 10 more years. Your ending balance is more than double. Those 10 years weren't worth the $84,000 you contributed in them. They were worth over $1.1 million in final portfolio value. Because compounding doesn't grow linearly, it accelerates. And the early years are disproportionately valuable because they have the most time to compound. This is why the question of when you start matters more than almost any other variable in retirement planning. The person who starts at 25 doesn't just end up with more money than the person who starts at 35. They end up with a fundamentally different financial life, and they got there with the same monthly investment. The decade of delay is the most expensive financial decision most people make without ever feeling like they're making a decision at all. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what if I'm already 45 and I've barely started? Is it too late? And I want to answer this honestly and specifically because it's never too late. As a general platitude isn't useful. The real answer is, it's not too late, but the rules change. At 45 with minimal savings, you are not going to leisurely invest $400 a month and retire at 65 with full security. That math doesn't work, but at 45, investing $1,500 a month at 8% for 20 years produces roughly $880,000. That's workable. It requires real commitment. It requires the drain being plugged aggressively. But the number exists and it's reachable. The window is narrower. The required behavior is more focused, but the destination is still there. And here's what the process of building toward this does to you as a person, because I think this is actually the most important thing, and it almost never gets said. The specific habits required to move from median retirement savings toward genuine security are not passive. You have to look at your spending with real honesty. Probably for the first time, you have to set up an investment account if you don't have one and automate contributions so your brain can't negotiate around them. You have to maintain a savings rate when life gets expensive, and life always gets expensive. You have to watch market volatility and not sell. You have to sit with the discomfort of delayed gratification repeatedly, in small ways and large ways, for years. And every time you do that, every month you hit your contribution target, every I deserve this moment you convert into a strategic pass. Every paycheck where you pay yourself first, you are building evidence, not just in your account, in your identity. You are becoming the kind of person who does the hard thing over the comfortable thing when the stakes are real. And that identity, that self-concept of being someone who builds rather than someone who plans to build, is one of the most durable financial assets you can accumulate. Because it applies to every financial decision you ever make from that point forward. Now let me show you how this plays out in 4 specific scenarios. Because the difference between being on track for retirement and being at the median isn't just abstract. It shows up in very concrete moments. A medical bill arrives that insurance didn't fully cover. $2,800. Person A, median savings, no real buffer. This goes on a credit card. It takes 8 months to pay off. Total cost with interest, around $3,200. It derails contributions for 2 months. Person B, financial foundation intact, handles it in 24 hours from their cash reserve. Contributions continue uninterrupted. The financial life of person B doesn't even register this as a significant event. A new job opportunity requires relocating to a city with 18% higher pay, but involves 3 weeks between jobs. Person A, no runway, can't afford the gap. They pass on the opportunity or negotiate badly because they need it to start immediately. Person B, months of runway available, makes the move confidently, negotiates a start date on their own timeline, and permanently increases their income and their savings rate going forward. The market drops 30%, which is normal, which will happen again. Person A watches their retirement account lose value, panics, and sells some positions to stop the bleeding. Person B, who understands the 8-4-3 compounding rule and has the emotional foundation of a real financial floor, sees a discount. They don't sell. They might even buy more. When the market recovers, which historically it always has, Person B's portfolio is materially larger because they held while others fled. You're 50, and your company offers an early retirement package. Person A hasn't accumulated enough to say yes. Even though the job has become miserable and the package is reasonable, they stay. Person B has been building for 20 years, has a real portfolio, and can look at the package as a genuine option. They take it, consult a financial advisor, and step into the next chapter of their life ahead of schedule. Same offer, the same day, to two different people. Only one of them could actually take it. The career dimension of all this deserves its own moment because I think it's genuinely underappreciated. The relationship between retirement savings and professional leverage is not just philosophical, it's mechanical. Every $50,000 in your retirement account represents roughly 5 or 6 months of expenses that you could survive on if you had to, which means it represents real, quantifiable walkaway power in every career interaction you have. The person with $200,000 saved at 45 has a fundamentally different negotiating posture than the person with $12,000, not because they're more skilled or more confident by nature, but because their financial structure gives them options that the other person genuinely doesn't have. And options change behavior, and behavior changes outcomes. The highest performing salary negotiators, the people who take the most interesting career risks, the professionals who leave bad situations before those situations leave marks, they are disproportionately people with financial cushion behind them. This is not coincidence. This is cause and effect. Build the cushion. The professional results follow. Now, and I mean this in the most practical possible way, here is the trap that catches people who finally start building toward real retirement security. The trap is called the reward spiral. It usually shows up after you've hit your first real milestone, your first $50,000, or the first time your account grows by more than your contribution in a single month. It feels like proof that you've arrived somewhere. And your brain, which has been in delayed gratification mode, decides this is the moment to cash in some of the discomfort you've accumulated. Maybe you upgrade the car. Maybe you take the vacation you've been deferring. Maybe you stop the automatic transfer just for a few months because you've been so good for so long. And individually, any one of those decisions might be fine. But if they represent a structural shift, if your savings rate quietly drops from 18% to 9% and stays there, you've just cut your retirement projection almost in half. Not from one decision, from a mood that lasted 6 months. Let me put a specific number on this because abstract warnings are easy to dismiss. If you drop your monthly investment from $900 to $450, half the contribution, for just 3 years at age 40, the impact at age 65 is not $16,000, the $450 per month difference you didn't invest. Due to compounding, the impact at 65 is closer to $85,000 in lost portfolio value. You didn't lose $16,000 in that 3-year drift. You lost $85,000 from the future account where it would have been compounding for 25 years. Every dollar you defer from your investment contributions isn't worth $1. It's worth whatever that dollar would have become. And at a 25-year time horizon, that's roughly $5 or $6. The sacrifice is never just the sacrifice. It's always the sacrifice times the compounding factor. So here's the close. The average person retires with somewhere around $87,000 to $250,000, depending on who you count and how. That number is not a verdict on the average person's intelligence or work ethic or character. It's the predictable output of a financial system that makes the wrong behaviors easy and the right behaviors feel impossible, and of a future self that the brain processes as a stranger until someone makes them feel real. You are watching this video. You are engaging with this question. That alone puts you in a different category than most people who never actually look at the data. But looking at it isn't enough. The gap between knowing what to do and doing it consistently for decades, that's where the real work is. That's where the difference between the median and the top quartile actually gets made. The number you need isn't $1.2 million if you don't need $1.2 million to live. Work backward from your actual life. Build the cash floor that makes consistent investing possible. Automate the contributions before your brain can argue. Keep your fixed costs contained so every raise actually moves the needle. And do not stop when the first milestone makes you feel like you've arrived. You've arrived at the beginning of the compounding phase. Keep going. Your future self isn't a stranger. They're you, just with a different account balance. And right now, you're the only person who can decide what that balance is going to be. Go make the decision.